Hi, I'm Peter Salai. I'm speaking for my mom, Ina Salai. She's been a resident of North Salinas for 50 years. We sent a letter to you last month at the suggestion of our councilwoman, Romines, but we received no reply. She feels very strongly that the city is neglecting her general neighborhood, not providing services. Specifically, sidewalks and streets are not repaired. Tree roots have upended many sidewalks and caused roadways to sink. This is in addition to potholes or crumbling asphalt that are not repaired. The city seems to be allowing more homeless encampments. These are unsightly and probably dissuade businesses and new residents to move here. But a greater issue for her is the amount of trash these encampments create. The city either does not pick up the trash periodically or does not seem to advocate for other agencies like Caltrans to clean up interchanges and roadways. The city does not enforce its ordinances and laws, especially on parking and on speeding in residential areas. Our area is blighted by an ever-increasing number of unsightly vehicles, many in disrepair, that have been stored on streets or driveways for months and even years. The 72-hour rule is routinely violated. So too are rules about not parking across sidewalks. If the city does not proactively enforce its ordinances, in essence, they don't exist. And thus, we have a general decline in the quality of our neighborhood. Police rarely patrol and never issue speeding or failure to stop tickets. In the past, services were provided with a lower tax rate and a smaller tax base. What has the city done with the tax money that used to go to her concerns? And if we could have some kind of response from Mrs. Romines or the mayor, that would be great. I'm sorry my voice is shaking, but it's hard to speak to a mess. I didn't know that. Thank you.
I get out of breath very easily with them on, so we understand. We will respond in the next week or so, next few days.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Hello, West White, Salinas County Homeless Union. And still the Zoom seems to be like, I mean, this place is almost empty. COVID or no, you need to include more voices, not just encourage people to come directly right here. That's why people need more ways to interact with you, if that's really what you're trying to encourage. There are a lot more proliferation of tent, and it's because, you know, the city is doing their job. They're taking people out from where they are to where you can see them better, and that is basically part of the issue. We need to be able to put people as an address somewhere. They can be 24 hours a day, okay, and then we can regulate that. You know, if we maintain minimal health and safety standards, then that's what's needed. You know, you got plenty of money for cleanups, then you clean up people's areas rather than trying to get rid of them. You know, don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. So we need to do things better. I hear people are supposed to go to hotel rooms. You know, so then why do we see more tent than where they're at? You know, that should be disappeared, gone, poof, housed, problem solved. So we shouldn't have proliferation of tent, and the people who are outside, it would be much easier to regulate them than just try to shoot them and shun them from society, because they still need to live and breathe, and they need to stop at chocolate stores, they need running water, electricity. COVID or no, I'm guessing there's still going to be no bathrooms available publicly, and that worries me. You know, I mean, this is still Jim Crow era type issue, and we need to stop open discrimination. We need to allow people to be somewhere 24 hours a day. Please stop this week.
Item up is 22-078 Health and Safety Day Projects. We have Sophia Rome, our Community Relations Manager, and there is no action on this item.
Got props with me this evening. So bear with me here. Okay, so this is an administrative report on Health and Safety Day projects, and as you'll recall, several months ago, the council was directing the Litter and Debris Subcommittee Litter and Debris Subcommittee to take a look at litter, debris, health and safety concerns at encampment sites, as well as look at how the city is working with their partners and addressing cleanups. So we had given you an initial presentation on the framework that we were creating for health and safety days. So the really important thing to remember about health and safety days is that, this is something that we need to balance for every member of our community, both residents, that may be driving by or live in the neighborhoods, as well as our unhoused community. They're residents as well, and we as a city have a responsibility to take all of that into consideration. So as part of this presentation, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Health and Safety Day projects and what that framework looks like and how we will go moving forward with encampment cleanups at encampment sites. And then we'll talk a little bit about immediate and short-term goals and objectives in the coming months and ongoing research that we're doing. So the first thing that I want to start with is city-owned properties. So this is just a graphic to show you what properties within the city of Salinas we will focus our Health and Safety Day projects. Now I point this out because we have the jurisdiction to address encampments on city-owned properties. So just wanted to pull that up for everybody. A couple weeks ago, the City Council adopted the 5-year plan to reduce homelessness, the Leave Me Home Plan update. And so I think it's really important, whatever efforts that we're doing in encampment sites, that we make sure that there's some sort of alignment with this, because it's all part of a small piece of the bigger picture. So Health and Safety Days, we try to align with strategy area 3 of the Leave Me Home Plan, which is expanding service-oriented response to unsheltered homelessness. So the purpose and the approach of Health and Safety Days is basically, again, to look at creating a safe, livable Salinas for all residents. And that includes community-level conversations, including and especially in encampment sites. But again, you're going to hear me say the word balance. We have to balance health, sanitation, and safety needs for all residents throughout the community. So the standards for best practices, whenever there is an encampment identified as a potential health and safety concern, there's different ways that we may approach this. If it is something that is immediate, that is a high health and safety concern that needs to be addressed right away, we will need to take immediate action just for the safety of everybody. However, whenever there is opportunity for us to conduct outreach and engagement, that is going to be our first approach. So before Health and Safety Days, we are going to begin engagement at least 14 days in advance. Some encampments, depending on the size of the encampment, the number of residents that are there, the amount of staff and services and resources that are available, will determine how much outreach needs to happen before we begin our Health and Safety Day. That could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, and in some cases it could be even longer than that. But we'll rely a lot on our SORT team through community development to help us identify those needs before setting an actual date for the Health and Safety Day. Some of the feedback that we received as we were talking to the community and talking to staff was around the date setting and the noticing. So with the date setting, part of the Health and Safety Day framework is that once the date is set, the date is set, and we're going to keep it that day to create consistency, so that way there is that structure, and there's not a moving date, unless for some reason, say there's an imminent need to move the date because of weather or because some other health and safety concern that needs to be addressed more promptly, but we will always do our best to try and do as much outreach as we can. But the goal is to keep the date the same. And then also working on revising the notices that are in the encampment sites. So I apologize, but was not able to add these into the PowerPoint presentation, but I want to show you, this is the notice that currently goes up, and it's a lot of text, a lot of words, and so this is our revised notice. So we did make some small changes. We do have to keep some of the language the same in there, but you'll notice right here there's a simple process for how you retrieve your personal property. So again, it's not a perfect solution, these things that we're proposing with the Health and Safety Day framework, there isn't a perfect solution. But it's little steps in the right direction, and eventually we want to continue working with everybody to continue to revise this program as it's needed. So prior to the Health and Safety Day, personal property bins will go out the day before. Previously, they only went out the day of, which could make for a very busy cleanup day. So this is again allowing for preparation, setting the mindset that okay, we're going to prepare to support you as we're moving forward with the Health and Safety Day cleanups. Backpacks for personal property. So previously, we were distributing bags, trash bags. So we wanted to take a positive step and try and distribute backpacks. And these are some special backpacks that are designed, they're weather resistant, they're very, very durable, very large size, that Megan Hunter and her team were able to acquire. And so the goal will be to provide backpacks for personal property to facilitate carrying those important things, the gear documents and medication that may need to go with you on the day of the Health and Safety Day. And then there's the post-Health and Safety Day activities, because it doesn't stop there. Once the cleanup has happened, there's ongoing outreach and connection to services and resources that are part of the framework. So I just wanted to show, put up a slide about our Salinas Outreach and Response Team, our SORT team. So this team is very small and is led by one full-time community development analyst and 4 part-time staff. And so they are out there busy trying to do outreach, trying to connect to services and support our unsheltered community. And I did want to highlight some of the great work that has been done by our SORT team and the city of Salinas. So there are approximately, according to the 2019 census tract, approximately 1,200 unsheltered residents. That's actually probably lower than what is truly the unsheltered population, just because of the pandemic. The point-in-time count wasn't able to be done in 2020, and we know that the pandemic did impact those numbers. And so the point-in-time count for this year was just done at the end of January, so it'll still be a few months before we get those actual numbers, but it is likely higher than 1,200. But through the support of SORT and Megan's team, this is some of the things that we were able to do with our city resources and grant resources. So following Health and Safety Days, it's going to be important to continue to collaborate with our partners, the Coalition for Homeless Services Providers, the county. This is a team effort, and we all have to work together to find the best solution and, again, find that balance between needs and health and safety. And then also continue community level discussions. The Health and Safety Day framework that we've created today may be different a year from now, 2 years from now, if the pandemic has taught us anything. Nothing today will, everything can change on a dime. So it's going to be important to continue to reevaluate what the needs are and continue to work with our partners as we move forward. And then, of course, the long-term goal is to continue with connection to resources and services, and for those unsheltered residents, that we are able to find them housing and find them shelter and give them those pathways. So, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. So, I wanted to bring this up because it's important to understand that sometimes our hands are tied in certain situations when we're doing cleanups. One thing is the waterways. We can't have litter, debris, trash, and pollutants going into our waterways. So when there is an encampment along the waterways, those are ones that do need to be addressed a little quicker. We will always, again, continue to do our best to do outreach and find those services and things, but just understand that that is somewhere where we cannot have encampments. So next steps, we do have an upcoming Health and Safety Day, which is March 1st. We had put on hold any Health and Safety Day projects because of the point in time count and the pandemic. So we are going to have that cleanup on Alisal Creek from John Street and LV Drive, and then there will be 2 additional cleanups in March, and Health and Safety Day projects, and those locations are to be determined. We're evaluating where the need is and where our resources will best be served. So additionally, looking at the longer term, we have applied for, Megan and her team has applied for a $4.1 million encampment grant, which will help us support encampment cleanups and services and Health and Safety Day projects. We're continuing proactive engagement and litter reduction at encampment sites, around encampment sites with the help of our partners like Downtown Streets team and several others. We are evaluating opportunities and costs for sanitation stations and porta potties and where those strategic placements would be that would best serve the community, as well as mobile showers in Chinatown. And again, I want to mention the 5-year plan to reduce homelessness that was adopted by this council. We will continue to look at those strategies and work with our partners to advance that plan. Okay, so with that, that is an overview of the Health and Safety Day framework, and if there's any questions.
Madam Mayor, if I could just for a moment add one thing. There is a companion item under the consent calendar for a contract with Clean Brothers for 10 porta potties and hand stations. So she touched on it in the presentation, but there is going to be an item later on the agenda for your consideration.
So we'll address that item when it comes up.
Correct.
In consent. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll come back to council. Councilmember for questions. Councilmember McShane.
Yeah, Sophie, thank you for this presentation. So 2 questions. One, so by engaging the Health and Safety Days beginning March 1st, is that the first, say, effort to go about addressing health and safety since cleanups were suspended last year?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then just confirming, as you've described here, and the staff report covers, as a member of the Litter and Debris Subcommittee, these health and safety days are being administered under the new and improved framework with contractors as described?
So our intent with this is to share the Health and Safety Day framework with our contractors, and everywhere there's an opportunity for alignment. We bring contractors on to do work, and they need to understand the way our approach and our end goals with that. So yes, we will be making sure that there's an alignment.
When was not that I would expect you to know, but maybe you have a ballpark idea, when was the last time we went about what we're now calling a Health and Safety Day? Has it been a year? Has it been a year and a half? 9 months? 3 years? Do I have 2.5 years? Give me 2.5, 2.5, how about a year and a half? It's been.
If I could have the videographers scoot back just so that there's a walkway. Apologies on that, thank you.
The last one we did was the Casantini cleanup, and I believe that was in October of last year.
I got it, okay. But that may have been kind of a special instance due to the needed sewer work. I guess I'm looking for a date. When was the last date we had an independent, say, effort to just address health and safety as opposed to, health and safety associated with a major public works project? Has it been over 2 years?
Well,
Pandemic? 3 years? Close to
the
pandemic?
cleanup efforts, we don't necessarily do, you're talking about the Lake Street
Yeah.
cleanup. We did that because it was an emergency, we needed to repair that sewer line. That was close to a year ago when we started that project, when we cleaned up Chinatown there.
But we've generally suspended efforts and now are resuming under this new framework. Is that
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Casantini was the last one we did before this framework came out. now that we're doing this framework, we're gonna try this on the Alisal Creek at John.
Got it. Cool. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you. That's all.
Steve, that was 5 years in Queensbridge, the last cleanup.
Okay, we'll go on. Thank you. We'll go on to Councilmember Rocha for questions.
Just to build off of that line of questioning, David, the cleanup that happened in Casantini was in October. The cleanup that happened in Chinatown, what month was that? I believe it was also in October. I think they were done in the, like 1 week of a different time.
You're correct. It was about that same time frame. We were doing them fairly close together. I don't have the dates in my mind on terms of when we did it. I can get that information probably by the time.
No, it's not.
the end of it, if you want
I
that
just
dates.
wanted to clarify the record here. And then also Sherwood Park was cleaned up, I believe, in September-ish.
We did Sherwood Park first, and then we did Casantini. So Sherwood Park would have been done in the August timeframe.
And also in Creekbridge as well. So that was just my question on that. I'm going to build off of Sophie's presentation. Sophie, can you please, thank you David for your answers. How are we going to keep the areas clean? So we go out and we do a cleanup. What I've noticed, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to change the way we were doing this was because I felt that we were waiting too long before the encampment just got really out of control. And not out of control in terms of people, but rather the amount of garbage that accumulated in the area got to be far too large. And so how are we going to ensure that addressing the garbage, litter, and debris component of it, are we going to do many cleanups in between to ensure that the encampment doesn't get too large and then we're waiting too long and coming back once it's really expensive to address?
Yeah, as part of our outreach effort, Megan's team does actually go out there and work with leaders within an encampment to see if they're willing to clean up their site if we bring them a dumpster for a day. We've done that in several different locations and we've had good luck with that. We've done it in Chinatown, we've done it on Sherwood Drive, we've done it on Main Street where we drop a dumpster off for a day, the residents clean it up and pull that dumpster up and then we move that dumpster up in the day. So we have that ongoing. We haven't done that in several months, but we were doing it like once or twice a month back last year during the height of COVID. And the residents were doing that cleanup, which helped with the effort basically, so that it didn't build up to the point where we had to go into a cleanup.
So would you agree that engaging those very residents in maintaining the cleanliness of the area through providing garbage disposal opportunities ensures that they remain clean and do not accumulate significant amounts of garbage, obviously with some exceptions?
But we try, like I said, we're trying to do that with residents, not necessarily the end all of a cleanup, but in the high visibility areas and the waterways, we don't want them in there because of our NPDS permit. So we try to clean them out and they'll move to someplace else. And then that area we might get big enough where we can give them a dumpster for a day.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify my question, and you're giving a lot of other info, which is good, but I just want you to focus on this one particular question I'm going to ask you. Is providing garbage disposal opportunities a key component of keeping encampments clean?
I would say yes.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. On the discussion of sanitation services, it was mentioned in the presentation. What are we really looking at? Porta potties are mentioned, but additionally, is there anything else being considered for the sanitation component of it?
Good evening, I'm Ron Powell of Community Development Housing. Housing Division is currently looking at a few different options. As you've heard, we have the contract coming forward with Lee Brothers that will continue the 10 or so porta potties that are placed throughout the city. At times throughout the pandemic and other times we've had more of those depending upon the need. and the locations. We're also exploring some opportunities for what's known as a Portland Loo that could be placed in different locations in the city, so we're looking at that as a possible option. We have partnered with the county whole person care funding to seek funding to purchase a shower trailer that we will be locating at the Chinatown Navigation Center. And that's pretty much the extent of what we're doing in terms of the sanitation services.
And it might not, so maybe cut me off if I'm going off on too far out here, but on the discussion of the NDPS permit and creeks, what is your strategy to maintain those areas clean and communicate with unhoused residents that we're struggling in terms of creating housing, but in terms of really like off limits places, creeks and waterways? I mean, how are we communicating that?
So like for instance, the cleanup that we're having, sorry, I'm really bad with addresses and directions. So the cleanup on, at LSL Creek from John to LV. So although that is somewhere that, you know, it's near a waterway and so we do need to address it, we are still allowing that 2 weeks of outreach and engagement. And that decision for 2 weeks was also, the SORT team was also included in that decision-making process to make sure that that was sufficient time to talk to the residents, to let them know that the health and safety day was something that was being scheduled, and to provide whatever information, resources, and support that we can in the meantime.
And one of the other concerns I have with the way the cleanups are being done in the past was that people are losing very important documents, their ID cards, their social security cards, very important documentation that's really challenging to get renewed when you don't have an address. That's really important. If you don't have an address, it's hard to get those documents renewed. So how are we going to ensure that in the event that there's a cleanup, we are making sure that people are able to, and I'm guessing it's part of that tax, but are not losing these very important documents?
Well, you know, it is also up to the encampment resident or the person who owns the documents to try and keep track of where those are. But yes, the backpacks are one way because it's a nice, secure place that you can keep them. But again, keeping that minimum of 2 weeks notice, that gives them time to prepare and to start sorting through their items. And then also the personal property bins going out 1 day before, that was actually something that was suggested to us by River, you know, as a positive suggestion, because in that moment, that's, okay, it's 1 day before, I need to start going through my stuff. I need to make sure that, you know, I have my documents and things that are going to be essential for me to maintain. So it's all, again, part of the outreach that's part of the framework.
And the last question I have is there going to be any sort of an update of any kind from the committee, Litter and Debris Subcommittee, or the chair at all? Is there any feedback on what those kinds of discussions were? Or is this a culmination of that work and those communications?
This is a combination. We had been talking about the Health and Safety Day projects in our Litter and Debris Subcommittee meetings. And, you know, the framework was developed through those discussions.
One last one is, what was the engagement process with, because I know that we engaged River and several other people who were involved in this line of work. How was that community engagement process like?
Well, I mean, you know, it started out, the conversation started right here in the rotunda with people coming forward and expressing concerns, you know, and obviously having independent conversations with city officials and city leaders. It was important to really look at this from all sides. You know, we not only engaged our community and people that are really connected to our unsheltered community, we also talked to city staff, we talked to our partners, and again, I'm going to go back to that word balance, right? There's not a perfect solution, and you know, for everybody involved, it's just finding that balance. We have to keep a healthy and safe community for everybody, every single resident.
Those are all my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Crummies, questions?
No questions, Madam.
Okay, Councilmember Osornio, questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so I do sit on the Litter and Debris Subcommittee, so for me, it is important to know that this is something that was discussed in the rotunda. You were also part of these conversations. What would you say as far as when we got the, feedback from the Unsheltered community, and then we brought it into subcommittee? Can you talk a little bit about some of those concerns that were brought up and how the subcommittee was able to kind of talk through those things? Because you're right, it's not so much a black and white, this is going to be the answer to fix this, but more, we're going to do this knowing that, yes, maybe, certain folks, but it's a better way to do things. Can you talk a little bit to the process that was done at the Litter and Debris Subcommittee?
Yes, absolutely. I think that we had a really good discussion about what the core issues were, and hearing from, again, staff and their experiences as well as your experiences and personal observations at encampment sites and cleanups. I think that again, like you had pointed out, that this is what we're doing now. It's baby steps, right? But it's going to be fluid because the needs are changing and we're not just stopping here. This isn't the perfect solution, and so these are the small changes we're able to do now, but as I showed in the last slide, we are continuing to look at opportunities that we can support our community from all sides regarding encampments and litter and debris reduction.
And being that we'll get this, we're getting this report now, but with what we're going to do going forward, have those same folks that were part of discussions early on to be able to improve how we do these health and safety days, have they also been briefed, or will they be briefed on the new way that we're going to conduct these?
Absolutely, and I don't think it's just about briefing, those people that we engage with. I think it's briefing the community. This is a community issue, and again, I'm going to go back to, we're really gearing up and ramping up our marketing and education strategy to be able to push out this type of information. So yes, you can expect to see that there will be information and tidbits on health and safety days and opportunities for engagement. As David pointed out, we're having our first one to try out this new framework and see how it works, and again, receive feedback, and would be glad to hear from the community after the March 1st cleanup.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barrera, questions?
Ms. Rome, as we look for this balance of partnerships, I know for several years now on this same issue, we've been trying to balance a good partnership with the city, county, and Caltrans. How do you see that development there? Because I know you're applying for a $4.1 million grant, but how do you see Caltrans and the county? Because they are big partners. How are they assisting in this matter?
Well, I think I'll turn that question over to Megan because she's really plugged in with those larger partnerships, and I want to make sure to get the information correct.
So I think actually we're fairly plugged in with both the county and the Coalition for Homeless Services Providers. They're the administrative entity of the Leadership Council, which is the continuum of care, which is kind of the region. They have the regional plan of how to address homelessness. And the mayor sits on the Leadership Council, and we're actually, city staff sits on a funding committee, so we actually talk about, the resources that the county has, philanthropy have, and the coalition, so that we can be strategic about how we address projects. So I feel very good. I think the county is larger than us, so there's multiple departments. So some departments, I think we're really keyed into. The Department of Social Services has been one of our best partners, so I feel really good about the work that we do around homelessness with them, especially.
Ms. Hunter, and with that said, as Ms. Rome was talking about the backpacks and making sure that these folks are able to get their personal papers together where they don't lose them. As you build this team, is mental health counselors, are they also involved in this engagement? Because time to time you will deal with either dual diagnosis, mental illness. How are we dealing with that?
Yeah, so I think we're starting to get improvement from behavioral health. They are starting to step in. But the one thing that I will say has really fundamentally changed between today and in the past is we've never had such street outreach response. I mean, not only our city team, but the CHE, which is out of CSUMB, they're highly engaged. Interim has, street outreach staff, community, human services has street outreach staff, Dorothy's. So we're all coordinating efforts and able to, help supplement folks. So we're really getting out to those encampments in a way we haven't. And in some ways, those street outreach workers are helping people get those documents. So a lot of them don't even have those documents, and that's been a push on those street outreach teams so that they can get housing. So I think we're in a much better place than we were in the past to really coordinate and to work. I think Sophie mentioned that we're bringing the bins the day before. In the past, we brought them the day of, and you can imagine that's a triggering experience for many of those individuals. So just having the ability to have it the day before and kind of get your items together, I think will also help.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. And my last question here, being cost effective with the new developments, the team that you're putting together, the outreach, the success of it, when you're able to take a dumpster to a site that needs cleaning, when they participate, I am sure we're saving a considerable amount of money as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to engage too, because, if people are part of the solution, they're going to keep up the encampment because they're going to, they can help each other. So I think eventually we definitely want to get into working with the encampment leaders to do that. I think the challenge is that there are some areas that there's so much trash build up that you can't do it with. You need to bring in a Smith and N, right?
Thank you.
Questions, Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Sophie, for the presentation. As a member of the Litter and Debris Subcommittee, I think that I really wanted to be sure that we rebound our approach, right? It is important to remember that the folks that are at these encampments are human beings. And so I refuse to lump any segment of the population of Salinas into generalizations of criminal jury or any other stereotypes that we describe. That being said, our residents deserve clean parks, clean neighborhoods, safe areas to live and to thrive in. So to see this manifest in this thorough, intentional, well-thought-out ways is quite a relief. I have a few questions here. When it comes to the notices that are posted up on the encampments, is there a standard of practice as to how many will be posted around the encampment? I mean, I hate to have there be an encampment where 40, 50, 60 people are residing and there's one notice posted.
Yes, actually, that was some great feedback from River as well as our SORT team observation that there are opportunities to make sure that things are posted correctly, that make sure that, when you're looking at an encampment site, it's not just a here's an entrance and here's an exit. So posting throughout to make sure that the entire encampment resident community there is able to see somewhere in the encampment that there is a posting. So that means that also is part of, as we're doing outreach and engagement, if there the SORT team or anybody that from the city that's going out sees that, that there's perhaps an area that
Prior to this iteration of Health and Safety Days, folks were included in the email thread when there would be a cleanup. Under the River, for example, they shared with me that they were part of that process, but then that the folks that were contacted changed. Is there going to be a set number of individuals or contacts that we have who have connections to the homeless union so that we can use them as disseminators of information?
Yeah, Yes, I do definitely see, I think about a month in my new role as PIO, opportunities for us to improve our communication channels, I think just all together. I am looking at the city website, seeing how we can do a better job about posting posting our notices on a single page that's easy to find. You can go to that same page and find whatever the current postings are, as well as opportunities to, whether it be email or exploring text messaging as an option, having a text messaging distribution list for notices when there are cleanups to our partners and things that need to be provided with this information to help us, like you said, share and be disseminator of information for us.
Going from reactive to proactive. And then in the past, I know that there has been issues of discrepancies when we as a city said, okay, we're going to give a 10-day notice. And it turns out that 10-day notice became 2 days. Who is to be held accountable should that trend happen? Is there a contact that we have? Is there an individual or department that we can say, hey, we're hearing from Gilseppi encampments that they were supposed to be given 2 weeks notice to get ready, to connect to services, to take care of what they need to take care of. Now that 14 days, because of many variables that can occur, is down to 3. Who do we, as council members, reach out to? Who do residents reach out to?
Well, I mean, there is definitely contact information on the notice, but, I am a public employee. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm glad to coordinate and connect you with whoever the best person is to speak to or actually give that information to you. By involving city staff and in the conversation and the development of the Health and Safety Day framework, part of the idea is that when people are at the table and they have a voice in the conversation, that brings a level of awareness. And they know, okay, this new framework is here, this is what we need to follow, and so there will hopefully be more attention paid to those types of details going forward. But for us, the magic number is 14 days. Unless there is, if there's an emergency situation or something that has changed that would require us to go out sooner. But again, that would come with outreach engagement and working on proactive notification.
And then perhaps this is a question for you as well, Megan. Has the city and the county clearly delineated who has what responsibilities when it comes to health and safety days, when it comes to the services provided post-health and safety days? We're talking about documentation, getting IDs, as you mentioned. I know that in the past it's been this dynamic of, well, it's your responsibility, I don't have the authority, you have the authority. If we're looking to shift our approach from we simply go, we clean up this area, and then folks come back to, we're going to clean up this area, but we're going to provide services, we're going to make sure that people are routed to where they need to be routed. I really believe it's of the utmost importance that people know, or the county can say, hey, this is my responsibility, I'm sending Monterey County behavioral social workers to this site, I'm accompanying, whomever is going to be on the street team. Is that clearly laid out?
So I think it depends on the location of the cleanup. The city's responsible, I would argue, for our property. But we do coordinate. I think we work together with the coalition, really, as the administrative entity for the continuum of care to coordinate our street outreach response. And that's when we work with Tay or Dorothy's or other providers to help provide that response. And then we also reach out to behavioral health. They are more responsive now, but they haven't actually been too responsive, particularly during the pandemic. They have been risk averse to going out to the encampment. So we really relied on the nonprofit service providers to help with that. And then we coordinate hotel rooms and other housing that we do coordinate with the county very effectively, especially since the county has been helpful in providing resources through the emergency rental assistance program, because some folks are newly homeless, so we've been able to also tap into some of that funding as well. So it's not
consistent, I would say, but I do think in some areas we're very coordinated. We're extremely coordinated at the Share Center, for example, working on beds. We work with Whole Person Care, who's been a funder of some of our sanitation stations in the encampments. That has really helped us extend those porta potties and sanitation centers. So we are clear on those who does what, but our attitude has always been, you know, in our city sites as a SORT team, we coordinate with Public Works and the police department and then encampment leaders to really carry that message through.
It's being fine-tuned, and again, you're talking to the daughter of a 30-year social worker in the county. He's always one to tell me, hey, the county and the city need to be better teammates.
Yeah.
And he's the first to say it. So I'm glad to see that it's getting better.
Yes.
And then when it comes to our next health and safety days, what areas of town are going to be focused on? I know that it's an area around John. I heard quite a bit about the Creek Bridge area behind Safeway, that pathway that goes from Safeway to the soccer complex. And I believe there's, I forget the street, but over on Las Casitas Drive, parallel to Barden Elementary. What factors go into deciding this area goes first, this area goes first? Is it resident outreach? Is it waterways? You know, I've spoken to many folks out in Las Casitas and some in Creek Bridge, and the parks are getting worse and worse and worse. So what goes into that decision-making process?
Yeah, Councilmember, I can take that one. We've been talking about this since I started, so over a year. Really right now, because we stopped for a few months, we didn't want to get past the point in time count at the end of January, so we didn't want the homeless moving around. We wanted to be able to accurately count them so we'd have better opportunities for funding down the road. But we are focused right now on the waterways, certainly on the 101 in John. That one's been on my list for 6 months because everyone that drives by thinks that's what Salinas is, and that's not what Salinas is. So I've pointed to city staff and said work on the waterways because the PDS program permit requires that we keep these areas clean, and we will. That's an absolute. After that, it was high visibility areas. The challenge, good or bad, depending on how I look at it, the beds are full. We have beds in the pipeline, and we have more beds coming, but right now the beds are full. Today, there might be a few vacancies because the weather got a little warmer. People have been cycling out of this COVID Omicron, but for all intents and purposes, there's no place for us to point these people to go to. So we're trying to say we've got to start with the waterways. We absolutely got to get out of the waterways. So that's where we're starting right now. And I'm hoping that in short order here, we'll have more beds for people, but also I know Vax is doing a good job. They're graduating some of their customers, so that'll open up some beds. And then so I know some people went inside because it was cooler there. It was warmed up a little bit. Maybe they'll open up a few beds for people that are looking for services. So that's kind of been the thought process. I know it's not a lot of science behind it, but it's supply and demand. I mean, there's 1,200, roughly 1,200 people out there. We have 4 part-timers, 1 full-timer, and we only have a few beds. So I think we're doing a very good job. I think Salinas should be commended for taking a leadership role in this. Really would like to see the county continue to be our good partner, and we can always do more.
Yeah, this is not an easy issue. So just one last quick question here. I've gotten call after call after call from residents who have had property stolen from their front or backyard, who have had folks enter their backyard, folks that are afraid of taking their kids to the park. And I've done the walkways, I've walked my dog right along there, and they tell me they've seen some kind of interaction. Who is the person to call? Is it a police officer? Is it someone from your street outreach team? If someone is having this kind of issue where they're going, you know what, there's this mental health person, I sit there out here every day, and I am seemingly threatened by this. Who are we encouraging our residents to call? I know that prior to this, there was an officer that was dedicated to working with our homeless population. So Chief, what does the standard of practice look like?
Councilmember Gonzalez, I always encourage the residents to call the police department for any criminal activities. We will respond and take charge of it. You're correct. We used to have a hot officer, Gabe Carvey, once he retired. I do not have the staffing to replace him, and therefore we have patrol officers that respond to those calls for service. But yes, if it's a violation of the law, that's what the police department is there for.
Thank you, Chief. And I remember, when you were first put in this position, we talked quite a bit about ideas like wellness support, cahoots. So I'm really happy to see the police department embrace these models and start to view this intervention along different levels. I think it makes us more efficient. This is not an issue that you solve overnight, clearly, but we need to make sure that we are honoring resident feedback. It makes me happy to hear you, Mr. Kerrigan, say, hey, we're doing great on this issue. I can't tell you how many residents will disagree and say, we're not doing enough, we're not doing enough. So presentations like this and words of assurance like that, Chief, are great contribution. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I will reserve for comment, and we will go out to the public. Would any member of the public wish to comment on this item? Welcome.
Hey, Robert Rose, Creek Bridge residents. And the notice says, what do you call this? Health and Safety Project. How am I supposed to know it has anything to do with homeless encampment cleanup? The agenda is supposed to be descriptive of the matter to be discussed. That's what the Ralph M. Brown Act says. It's a Brown Act violation. Did your city attorney look at these? I'm glad to hear that the city and county are coordinating. That was one of my questions. I'm concerned with the Creek Ridge neighborhood, a lot of county property out there. Waterways, I walked around Car Lake the other day, and there are lots of encampments around there. I'd like to know how far from the lake is a waterway. There's a lot of encampments around there. That was a restoration project. I'm finding out about that. Years ago, that was an environmental restoration project. So at what point does this become a project? If you want to stop the sweeps and have them in one location and give them public services and porta potties and showers, at what point does that become a project under CEQA that requires environmental review? Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this item? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council members, Mr. Callahan and city manager. My name is Yolanda Hayes. I'm a Creek Bridge resident, and I'm glad that you're doing all this. It all sounds very nice, especially since I know Sophie's going to be behind this. Gives me a feeling of confidence. But what about the residents? No, everything is for the homeless, and the residents aren't being taken care of. We have a pathway where children are being harassed by the drunks on the homeless drunks that are in that area. A mother with 2 children, 5 and 8, were harassed to drink liquor. We've had 5 deaths that we know nothing about. One was a homicide. When this location was selected, it was a no-brainer. One of the council members, I clearly even have nightmares. It's a no-brainer. It's near to the mental institutions. It's near to the hospitals. This is the best place. We get the land from the county. The only thing the county ended up doing is passing the buck and pulling one over our heads. They actually gave us the land because they probably want to make this the capital of the homelessness. And that was my objection when I was protesting. We've had a lot of situations. Neighbors are scared to go to Safeway. This particular Sunday, the residents were following other residents that were paying for groceries, making sure that they paid for the groceries. They're chasing the carts. We need some safety and some protection as well. Maybe it's different than what they need, but we need safety and protection as well. And we don't believe we're getting it. the stance that they're getting, but the city stance is leave them alone. And the county, the same thing. Please, we need some help. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on this comment, on this item? Well done.
Gosh, couldn't resist, sorry. Wes White, Salinas, Minor County Homeless Unit. Those showers are gonna be not mobile, they're gonna be stationary in Chinatown. And actually, the navigation center was already supposed to be a 24-hour bathroom, shower facility that just ended up being just its own, which kind of negated a lot of that. You knocked everybody off of Solid Street, you put a red zone for even people who live there. Moongate has like 90 people, and those people have cars. They're not allowed to park there. You should be outfitting people with new tents and sleeping bags and clothes and food and utensils and, the generators and barbecue pits. These are items that people lose on a constant basis. Instead of paying for sweeps, if you want to have them move somewhere else, where do they go? Obviously nowhere, just a backpack, cheap tents. I mean, people are trying to come up and you can't just smash them. They do need to be somewhere, and they need to be somewhere safer than where they're at. That's fine. Open up some spots. And yes, CEQA is going to end up being an issue. But how are we actually helping people? Because I see people getting paid, contractors getting paid. I see trash and litter still being there. In fact, ground into it because of the bulldozers. I see shopping carts still in the waterway. So, how are we spending our money? Because you talk about, and CDC guidelines say 10 people, one porta potty. That's supposed to happen. It should. So I don't see the math. 1,200 people and 10 porta potties. That doesn't compute. You should have at least 120. You should have them around the city and wherever people are at. And if you don't like where they're at, then open up another spot. But people need to be somewhere. Laundry, showers, barbecue pit, electricity. These are modern amenities that every household has, and now we force people into being in a virtual world, and yet we're still pushing people out. These subsidies.
Okay, thank you. Last call? All right, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. We'll come back to council for final comments. No action on this item. It's just for informational purposes only, so I'm going to respectfully ask the council to keep your final comments as succinct as possible. We have a rather large audience for our next item as well, so I want to be respectful of their time. I'll start to my left, Councilmember McShane.
Yeah, committed to continuing to meet with the Litter and Debris Subcommittee. I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of progress that's been made to resume health and safety days, as they're called, not cleanups, health and safety days. And to residents that have showed up, thank you. The more that we report, the more that we hear from you, the more that we welcome that feedback, the better we can respond to what is a growing issue. And I want to compliment Councilmember Rocha. I'm sure your inbox is full, and it'll continue to be full. And I think as a city, we're doing much better with Sophie and Dave and others' commitment to going about addressing homelessness in a very humane and person-centered way.
Councilmember Rocha, final comments.
Thank you. I will try to be succinct. Mayor, I just have to say there's a lot of stuff to try and just touch on, but I will do my very best. The change in procedure on how we did the cleanups came about because we were doing a lot of very large cleanups, and what I was starting to see, and I'll call them out specifically, we had a large cleanup at Sherwood Park, we had a large cleanup in Chinatown, we had a large cleanup in Casantini. What I was starting to notice was that these cleanups, without a long-term strategy, without coordination of services, without community engagement, was leading to encampments being disseminated all throughout the city. And what was a particular concern for me was that they were further and further away from services, further and further away from transportation, further and further away from public restrooms. And that, in my opinion, is what led to a lot of garbage accumulation. It is what led to unsanitary conditions. city, in my opinion, at that time, was more interested, let me rephrase that. The strategy we were using was moving people around and nothing else. And we didn't have enough services available, we didn't have enough units available to house people. Actually, let me rephrase that. At the time, we had more beds available. At the time, we had about 20 beds available at the Share Center. My opinion was because we were moving people from place to place, we were not able to engage the residents of those particular encampments in a manner that would foster trust, which ultimately is necessary to get people to come to the realization that they need services. Obviously, the case is very different from some people. Some people gladly go to other people. That journey is a little bit more challenging. As these encampments start to come up in neighborhoods like Creek Bridge, there are concerns around safety, there are concerns around sanitation, there are concerns around the cleanliness of encampments there. Those are very serious, very valid concerns. The purpose of the health and safety cleanup and the purpose of the name change was to focus on what the concern was: sanitation, cleanliness, and the overall health of not only the residents in the encampments, but the residents of the community as well. And so in creating this strategy, our goal is to get at the root cause of what's going on through our Housing First model, but also address these things that have come up because of the lack of housing. And so when the question is posed as residents regularly ask, what do you do about the homelessness issue? Well, housing is the answer. But in the meantime, we have encampments, and those encampments have a lot of trash, which shouldn't be a surprise because how much money do we spend as a city on our public services to pick up the trash at people's homes? So we spend all the money on that infrastructure to deal with the trash in residential areas. We also need to allocate significant funding to address garbage that comes in from encampments as well. So trying to get the summary here, really the purpose of this is long-term we need to address homelessness through housing. In the immediate, what can we do to address some issues? And that is to help in cleanliness of these encampments. A strong leader in my district, Johanna, came forward and said, what are you doing for the residents? This here, me as a policymaker, I'm hoping that is also to the benefits of the residents because the concerns are on garbage. And so the residents, I'm a lifelong resident of live there all my life. I know the feeling when you're driving out on Constitution, you see the encampments. There's a feeling that your heart drops because those encampments are people. And we see that every single day. And so long term, we need to build more housing, more units for the unhoused. There is a significant demand, not enough supply, and immediately to address the sanitation, health, and cleanliness of the encampments. And we do that through collective policy making, bring everyone to the table. And so that's my commitment to the public. I'm going to bring everyone to the table and work on this in the long term.
Councilwoman Corbett, final comments.
Homelessness is a huge issue in our nation, not just in Salinas. And I'm glad that, I want to thank the subcommittee, first of all, for the work that they did on this. And I'm glad that the city is taking a different approach to it. Housing is an issue, and it's been a huge issue in Salinas for a very long time. You cannot build 50 units a year and expect to meet the housing needs of this community. And that's what has happened over decades. So now we're trying to make that up. But we can't just make it up with affordable housing. We have to have affordable by design. There has to be market housing. There's got to be a lot of housing built to be able to meet the supply of everyone in the community. Not just the homeless, but all of us need a place to live. And this community needs to be taken care of. Everyone in the community needs to be taken care of. And that includes our homeless, but it includes our community as well. People who are concerned about the children walking on the paths that we've built. I'm concerned about that as well, and I feel your pain when you come up here to talk to us. I hope that we can come to a conclusion in the near future that helps, and I think part of it has to be mental health. And that's somewhere that we need a better relationship with our county and our police departments, our sheriff departments. What can we do to help with the mental health aspect of this and getting people the help that they need so that we can get them out of homelessness? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmembers Osornio, final comments.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to just thank as well the subcommittee, as I'm a member of that subcommittee. It's been a very important topic here at the city. And like I said earlier, it is a balancing act, because while we want to make sure that we let residents know it's not just an easy fix, it's not just pick something up, move it, drop it, and then keep on doing it over and over. So we are working really hard in subcommittee with the city manager and other department heads to make sure that we're finding that middle ground. I think this is a good step in the right direction, one step in the right direction. And I look forward to continuing to make steps in the right direction to getting this, to getting the lives of our unsheltered and our residents that live in the city to be able to have an improvement when it comes to this. So I look forward to continuing the work ahead of us. We have lots of work to do, but I look forward to it, so thank you.
Councilmember Guerrero, final comments.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I see the frustration with a lot of us, a lot of fear, rents, mortgages. We live in a very expensive area, and we are actually looking for answers. And I think I've been here on this council for a while, and it looks like we're finally moving ahead on this very serious issue. I just want to ask you to think about that person that's out there, no home, no place to live, but they're going through mental issues. Maybe whatever situation they're going through, they're living in fear, and they're out there. They're in fear, and when we come out of our home to walk the dog or take the children for a walk, we're in fear of them, and they're in fear of us. That's the reality. You know, where I live in the Alisal, half a block from Plaza Park, every morning about 4 or 5 in the morning, you hear a lot of people coming out of their homes. They're going to work, hard-working people, but they're a different kind of homeless. They rent space. They don't rent a room. One of them will spend $300 to sleep on the couch. Another one will spend $200 to sleep in another little room or a shed. And that's the reality of what we live in. Did you know that there are families renting sheds? A shed where your lawnmower and your tools are actually paying rent. That's the reality. And it's sad. And it pains me, some of you folks deserve to live peace in your home, peaceful in your home, but yet we're having these issues. I think to Mr. Kerrigan, to Chief Felicia, I know we mentioned cahoots, we mentioned other small projects that can really make a dent. And I know Chief Felicia, I do have to say he's there when we need him, but we don't want to burn him out either. I'm concerned about that. He's a hard-working man. But you know what? But I think we have a good team going right now. I think Ms. Rome is taking us in a good place. I really believe that. And let's be patient, let's work together. If you do feel that somebody is trying to cause damage to your life or somebody, the chief just told us to call 911. Don't call him personally, call 911. But I think we're moving in the right direction. It's going to be slow, it's painful. It really is, it's painful. But let's work together. Let's not blame each other, because that's when we all fail. It's when we start blaming that one or the other is not doing it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Gonzalez, final comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just first and foremost would like to thank the residents that are out here today. It's your free time. You're showing up. And please continue to call us. Please continue to tell us these stories. That informs us. And as your elected advocates, it's our job to relay this to city staff and to act on it. Thank you, Sophie, for the presentation. It's been an honor to serve on the Litter and Debris Committee and to get to help formulate what this solution is. You know, in instances like this, it's often those most affected by the problem that have the most innovative solutions. So I really am going to look for city staff to continue to do this outreach so that there isn't this perception from residents that the county and or the city are just sitting on this issue and ignoring them. It's unacceptable that folks feel ignored by us. It's not okay. The issue of homelessness is evolving. It's multifaceted. And to me, that means that our solutions need to be evolving as well. Yes, we know that the long-term solution is housing, but in the meantime, working intentionally, humanely, and proactively helps. We need to have these long-term goals. It is a great comfort to me to see that, Megan, you're doing exceptional work. And I really, really am happy to see that the county and the city are working collaboratively on this. And I just ask that we have further public education initiatives, whether it means a town hall specifically on the issue of homelessness, or another meeting with the supervisors. We had, I think it was one joint meeting last January. I'd like to see more opportunities like that for collaboration. This is a team effort, and it's not something that we'll be able to take on overnight, but it is something that we do need to continue to focus on. I think presentations like this, public discourse, education really helps to make sure that our follow-through is just as intentional as what we promise on days like this. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, and just a final nod to city staff for the efforts that you put forward when the council asked you to pivot. You pivoted. Thank you very much to the Litter and Debris Subcommittee for the work that you do. That was a subcommittee I put together last January based on the needs of the residents, and was really, it's been one of our most important subcommittees that we have created this year. So just very grateful for the work, and as we continue the conversation, very grateful for the best practices that we're putting in place for the 5-year Leave Me Home Reduction of Homelessness project that we are participating in. So with that, we will deem this report received. Thank you. Item 068, the agreement for services with Jason Cardinelli doing business as Clean Brothers. We'll start with Councilmember Rojo.
Just wanted to go a little bit into detail. I saw the allocation was $100,000, but I was wondering what the breakdown was. Is that $100,000 per duration and time? Is that $100,000 that goes for a specific number of portable restrooms? What exactly are we agreeing to?
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of both, but mostly it's actually related to the number of times they clean the bathrooms and the sinks. So we have daily cleanings at most of the facilities, and we've, had as many as 21 stations. Now we're down to 10, and we've actually spent at a higher rate because of in some cases, if we hear from the encampment, hey, it's not clean, we might, increase to 2 cleanings per day.
So how many portable restrooms are we going to have?
Right now, there's 10 in existence, but it's really based, I don't know if you look at the contract, but when they provide the scope, the numbers, it's really related to the number of times they clean the restrooms.
Okay,
So,
those are all my questions. I'll move for approval.
I'll I'll need a second for.
Understood, I've got. there's one-
Oh, yeah,
He's
yeah. I think
on
there's
the
one or two
table,
more.
so I'm-
Is that enough? I think there's
I
still
will
more.
acknowledge that we have a motion.
Do you have something to
Okay,
say?
so
Yes.
seconded by Councilmember Osornio, we go on for
Mayor?
additional discussion.
Yeah, she's still going.
She's still doing it. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but we do have one more.
I'm very well
Okay,
aware.
sorry.
There's a motion on the table, I'm calling for a second, and
Thank you,
we'll go
Laura,
on for
appreciate it.
additional discussion.
Want to make sure.
All right, on to the next one, we have Councilmember Osornio, then after that, we'll go with Councilmember Gonzalez, and then we'll go out to the public, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is going to be around, so I do understand that the monies proposed here are going to be for the actual cleaning. Is there, because the cleaning I feel is probably the most expensive part of, maybe not just having 10 porta potties, but is there a way that maybe if this company themselves can donate more porta potties, or the reason I bring this up is because I believe in a conversation before, there was a certain individual that had called me up and had a very big, they were very interested in donating porta potties to the city of Salinas, but they weren't going to be able to actually maintenance them. If we did get more porta potties in the future, can we add to this at any time, or is it only, are we capped out at 100,000? And can somebody like donate things like that to the city? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when we take donations, Mr. Cardinelli has been somewhat generous and we've had like porta potties destroyed and they've replaced them at kind of no cost. They had initially, I think, donated a few. The issue is, I'm not sure if whatever's donated is compatible with their cleaning vacuums or whatever. So that's the hard thing to say. Is I'm sure they would be willing, but we just have to make sure that there's a compatibility so that they can clean those.
Okay. And so this is just for 10 here then, and it looks like 7 to 9 encampments. Okay.
Yeah, and we've had with this contract in the past, we've surged up, like added porta potties, taken away porta potties. And perhaps we have more funding, we might scale up. Of course, we'd come back to increase the number.
And how do we, just to know kind of how it works, I know 100,000 is proposed here, but how does that number get increased? Does that come from your recommendation to us and then us approval, or?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not to exceed amount, so if we see that we would go over that, we come back for.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. Just curious, Megan, what is the correlation that initiatives like this, projects like this, has to backs? Is this something that the providing of more porta potties, shower stations, hand washing stations, is that something that the city is actively looking to provide? Or is that more of a, will this opportunity present itself and so we jumped on it?
No, so we, early in the pandemic, we were very concerned about the spread of COVID among the encampments. So the city jumped on it. Actually, we were at first to do this in the county. And because of that, we actually, a lot of cities weren't able to secure porta potties in the beginning. And so we did have 21 stations at one point. We coordinate with the encampments and discuss locations of where they best should be placed. And we also coordinate with Public Works to make sure we're not, in violation of any encroachment issues. And we collaborate very closely with the PD because we also don't want to create an attractive nuisance. So it's a collaboration on where we site them between the encampment, themselves, the SORT team, the PD, and Public Works.
Many pieces of the puzzle. So, I've heard this before, and you mentioned tonight as well, about what the CDC recommends or potentially mandates in terms of the number of folks at an encampment and the corresponding number of porta potties, et cetera. Is that something that the city can use as rhetoric to perhaps get more that are either donated, as Councilmember Osornio suggested, or that can give us access to more funding?
Yeah, so the most expensive cost is cleaning up, and the disposal costs. I think that we've been lucky, we've gotten funding from the coalition and from Homelessness Care. So I think people are, supportive. The challenge is locating them in a place that is safe, needed, and won't create any sort of, unintended consequences. So I think we are looking at maybe adding more porta potties kind of in those discussions.
Thank you so much, Mary, I appreciate it.
We'll go out to public comment. Mr. White, you pulled this item?
Yes, ma'am.
West White, Salinas, Minor County Coalition. With these 10 porta potties, I'm hoping that maybe we can create some intentional community out of these where people have immunity from sweeps. Okay, this becomes their permanent residence. They can have an address, they can be registered to vote, they can vote against you, they can vote for you, and enroll them in HMI's cars. You're going to find that almost everybody already is. And then you're going to find out that most everybody's already been trying to access services that are unattainable. And this becomes our middle ground. They need laundry credit. Mobile shower that actually goes to these locations. Not that you have to go to Chinatown, because a lot of people will not go to Chinatown. Even the pool after hours would be a good spot, for people to have showers, because those are permanently located. People need kitchens and generators, storage. The intentional community is kind of what, a dog run place or something. I don't think it's that hard. I think it's just a matter of accepting people and realizing and legitimizing them. And you got 1,300 people that you have to at least try to meet more than halfway. Not everyone is going to accept it. But these minimum rules that just help them with safety standards of just, a tent and ground, that's it. It's not a blanket of trash, move on. We should be mitigating the issue and not just stealing everything people have. They have very little to begin with. That's why I said we should probably pay for another tent and everything else to re-outfit them. Because now they're that much poorer, and you're creating almost a criminal element in that, because now they have to go and retrieve those things that were lost. The way we do business and needs to be efficient, and we need to just knock it out and make it a problem solved. And that's why I'm saying these places should be more intentional community, and by stopping the sweep.
Okay, motion made by Councilmember Rocha, seconded by Councilmember Osornio. Call for the vote on 068, please.
Councilmember Barrera?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember McShane?
Yeah.
Councilmember Osornio?
Yes.
Councilmember Rocha?
Yes.
Mayor Craig?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 0.